This conversation was sponsored by Dash, an open sourced, decentralized, and privacy centric digital currency with instant transactions. Learn more at dash.org. Hello, we're here at Acapulco 2016. I'm joined by Barry Cooper, the one and only. You have a really interesting story. I think that it's a very inspiring story because there's a lot of despair in a sense when we look at how bad the world is and how much of a machinery it is that runs human brains, right? And the possibility that people can actually change and sort of become enlightened and go through that badass crazy journey that you've gone through is very, very inspiring. Could you tell us a little bit about how you came to that awakening moment where you realized that you needed to sort of change course, and what were you doing before a little bit, so people that don't know you?
Sure, yeah, for me, okay, great, great. For me, it was about the right information. Once I had the right information, I easily switched, and I'm 46 years old, and I still live like that. But I grew up pre-internet, and my parents and the church and my peers and all the people that mattered in my life, told me and drilled into me the propaganda that they heard, which was anybody who does drugs is evil. So when I became one of the top drug enforcement agents in the U.S. and I was arresting and caging all of these Americans for, peaceful drug use, I thought I was doing the moral thing. I thought I was doing the right thing. And I had no other side of the argument to tell me any different until the internet came out. When the internet came out, I started seeing all these arguments. I started smoking pot a little, which, marijuana has a way. They've already proven how it helps physically. People with cancer and all sorts of physical. I mean, it's like a vitamin. But science hasn't been able to explain how it does touch compassion centers and conscience centers in human beings. And that's what it did for me. It woke my conscience up along with the right, so marijuana use along with the right information. It was an easy switch.
You also did shrooms, is that right?
Oh, yeah. Well, after I did the marijuana, I started researching drugs, and I learned mushrooms along with MDMA, the psychedelic. The psychedelics are really good for treating post-traumatic stress syndrome, which I had a severe case. I was actually medicated for it. Almost lost my mind over it from the drug war.
Yeah. And then,
But now I'm off all medications. I smoke pot, regularly, and only take mushrooms and ecstasy maybe 5-6 times a year, just to help me stay tuned up. Those drugs actually help in a huge way.
so
I'm sorry.
that's fine. So you started to learn more. You started to sort of question the ideology that you were raised with, and then at what moment did it hit you? Like, oh my God, I need to get out of this. And I need to start giving back and helping people.
Well, there wasn't any one moment. There were a lot of moments together. One moment, I was actually a cop. I raided a house, and I've told this story many times on Fox News and other media channels. I raided a house, and it's a nice family. The kids had straight A's on their report cards. The parents had money in the bank. Their checkbook was balanced. One of them had their own business. And we took mom and dad to jail over pot and orphaned the kids for a brief moment. And that woke me up. I mean, I said, this seems ridiculous. I thought these people, the church told me they were evil. The Christians said, oh, they're evil if they're doing drugs. Well, these people weren't evil. So I had that awakening moment. And of course, I told you when I smoked marijuana, I had an awakening moment. And when I got the right information and the proper arguments presented to me that proved putting people in a cage for a drug is immoral, I had those three things going on, and I just switched. I think most humans will switch with the right information.
It's an excellent message. Now, you're famous for the activism that you do to stop the war on drugs. Can you talk a little bit about why what is the war on drugs, and what are you doing to sort of stop it, or what have you done? Maybe a few things.
Well, the war on drugs, if you calculate the cost, and I'm not talking about a monetary cost, everybody throws that one in the air. It costs billions of dollars a year to support this drug war. Okay, I appreciate that. It's like they're taking billions of dollars of tax dollars to support this drug war. Well, who's making those billions of dollars? We need to say there's a certain group of people making billions of dollars off this drug war. But if you add up the humanitarian dark crime suffering cost, and I hate to use this word because a lot of people use the word Holocaust, but if you can measure pain and suffering on a scale or with a meter scientifically somehow, the drug war far outweighs the Holocaust. We were talking about 40 million people placed in a cage over the last 30 years since Nixon started this. So the drug war to me is a dark ages torture chamber that a small group of people are making billions of dollars off of by imprisoning Americans. There's no other society in the world ever recorded. The United States wins the all-time world record of number of incarcerations, and that's proportionately and numerically. For instance, China has 1 billion more people in population than the United States, but we have more people in prison than China. The United States has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners. And we don't even want to discuss that once they're in prison, there's another prison inside of a prison called solitary confinement. There's 80,000 people right now being tortured in solitary confinement. And if you don't think solitary confinement's not torture, talk to the United Nations. The United Nations has made a public announcement stating that solitary confinement is torture. So people are being tortured inside the United States in the name of this drug war. So others can make billions of dollars in the private prison industry. You're talking about supporting judges and cops and lawyers and politicians. So there's no question it's buying the people's blood is what the drug war is.
People that are caught in the war on drugs legal system right now, what can you do to help them?
Well, the legal system that they have in the United States of America is not just, and it's not fair. The jury system, there's nothing fair about a jury system. It's impossible to get a fair trial in the U.S., even if they follow by all their rules. It's set up to be unfair. For one, they say the judge is impartial. That's not true. The judge gets paid by the government, and the judge and the prosecutor and the police always form a triad against the defendant, and that's why over 95% of the people in prison now, which is over 2 million people, never received a trial. They plea bargained out because of the pressure and the way the U.S. government scares people into plea bargaining and not taking this stuff to trial. But one thing you can do if you get busted for drugs, you can call me. As far as I know, I'm the only one in the world doing what I do. And there's other people saying that I'm the go-to guy if you get busted for drugs. I'm not a lawyer, but I am an expert witness, and I've successfully, hands-on, either had released or saved over 300 people from going to prison or go to jail. People email me through my website, nevergetbusted.com. I charge a fee for my services because the resources I use to get this done is very expensive. We do have a payment plan though, and I have a stack of free cases. I keep at least 20 pro bono cases on my desk at all times. That's for the poor people, but I can't get to everybody. And I review the evidence and work with their lawyers and provide defense strategies that work.
Excellent work. I really appreciate what you're doing. I really appreciate that you're a whistleblower against the drug and wars, this war machine. Let's talk a little bit about technology and how, in Bitcoin in particular. Of course, Silk Road has made the news multiple times, and it seems to have had a pretty deep impact on the markets. What are your thoughts on online darknet sort of drug exchanges and how they are impacting the drug markets and the war on drugs?
Well, first of all, selling drugs is moral. arresting somebody for drugs is immoral. So in terms of that, the Silk Road wasn't doing anything immoral. It was an exchange between a voluntary exchange between two people, between two adults, and nobody was harmed in that transaction. So the Silk Road has the moral high ground. In terms of the effect of the drug war and the drug markets, it didn't affect anything in the sense that we would like it to have. It opened up people's minds that there is a way to circumvent the government through the internet, which Bitcoin's doing that with the Federal Reserve. We think we're going to see how all that pans out, but I have a lot of hope for digital currency. But all Silk Road did was give the FBI and DEA and somebody else another bunch of people to bust. That's all it did. It really didn't affect the drug war in any way. It didn't affect drug prices in any way, except it kept a lot of people from getting busted. They had a safe place to go get their drugs, and it was mailed to them, and most of them didn't get busted. It was the people in charge that get busted. He deserves to be free. It's ridiculous that he's in prison. They're making an example out of him. He didn't do anything immoral. And I see an end to this drug war in my lifetime. And when that drug war ends, he'll get out of prison. What's his name? Russ Holbrook. Yeah, he'll get out of prison. These drug war prisoners that are sitting in here on nonviolent drug war crimes, they're eventually going to be released. And we're going to start seeing that 3 to 5 years from now. And I think the last drug war prisoner will be released within the next 20 years. So these life sentences that these people have, those are all going to be switched over. And there's going to be a mass release of prisoners. I believe that.
What do you see as the maybe 2 or 3 markers that the war on drugs is ending, or that drug liberalism will sort of come to be the mainstream position?
Well, it's the mainstream position already that we end the drug war. That's what the people want. The government's always far behind the people. The people are always way ahead of the government. That's why I'm an anarchist. But the government, they've learned, I said this 10 years ago when I released the Never Get Busted videos that teach people how not to get busted for pot. I said the marijuana will become legal the day the same people who are realizing most of the money on prohibition will be able to continue to receive those dollars. For instance, the United States of America, that government receives billions and billions and billions of underground black dollars to help fund their wars. Ronald Reagan got caught smuggling cocaine, trading them for arms during the Iran-Contra affair. The plane got shot down in Costa Rica, busted it wide open. He was smuggling cocaine to fund wars. Well, the U.S. government's still doing that. It's just nefarious, and they're doing it under the table. The cartels in Mexico who are providing all the drugs, it's illegal for them right now because of prohibition. Well, they've gotten together on secret levels now, and the U.S. government is going to continue to assume those billions of dollars by taxing the drugs. And the cartels, they're not going to give up. You can't just fly in and shoot a cartel member anymore like you did back in the Noriega days and Pablo Acosta days. When I was working narcotics, the U.S. government would fly in and helicopter pilot and machine gun these cartel members down. You can't do that anymore because the cartels are they're the de facto government in Mexico, and they take better care of Mexico than the U.S. government takes care of the U.S. Don't let anybody fool you there. So they can't run in and shoot up cartel people anymore because they're too powerful. So there's agreements behind the doors, and those agreements are, and you're going to see this, to make the cartels in Mexico the legal importers of moonshine, whiskey, alcohol. Relating back to Prohibition days, the people in Italy used to, and Ireland, when alcohol was illegal in the United States, they illegally smuggled, they were the cartels back then, and they used people like Al Capone to illegally smuggle their product into the U.S. And then when Prohibition lifted, overnight, they became the Jack Daniels and the big wineries. Well, that's what you're going to see. The cartels here are going to be the big importers, legal importers. So they're going to continue to assume those illegal dollars, and the U.S. will continue to assume their illegal dollars through taxation. You can't just make marijuana illegal overnight. They can't, because of the butterfly effect. It'll stop a cash flow. So they've been putting things in place for the last 5-10 years, getting ready to lift prohibition. These politicians claim they're the ones who are lifting prohibition, and there are even some activists who claim I helped lift prohibition. I think we all did it collectively, but it never would have happened if the governments didn't figure out how to reassume those dollars, and they've got it figured out now. Prohibition is lifting because of the case I just made.
There's reports of medical marijuana industries and providers in the United States that are doing, like I think California or the West, the West Coast, that are literally have truckloads of cash because they can't get a bank to take their money so that they can move it. Have you heard about this? What do you know about that market right now? Because it seems like a pretty good opportunity for alternative currencies, perhaps.
Well, I have heard of that going on, but I've also heard the federal government is loosening up the banking laws, and banks are allowed now, certain banks, to accept marijuana dollars from states like Colorado and Washington where it's legal. So they're gonna loosen up and start letting the drug money go back through the banks because it's going to be legal drug money. But that's not the argument for cryptocurrency. The argument for cryptocurrency is what we all know, and that's that paper-backed money is backed by a nuclear bomb, and that's it. It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by anything. It's backed by the might of the United States of America. In fact, if you fuck with their dollar, you'll die. For instance, Colonel Gaddafi. He was a wonderful man. You wouldn't imagine Libya, what he built up, and all the Africa's not a country. It's a continent full of countries, and most of the leaders in those African countries loved Gaddafi, and he was going to start a dollar in Africa. Africa was going to have their own dollar, and it was going to hurt the oil dollar. That's why they went in and bombed him, and they put him on YouTube being stabbed in the ass. It's horrible. I don't know who saw that, but it was there. It was on YouTube. They captured Gaddafi, this wonderful, beautiful king. They called him Mad Dog Gaddafi, and they did it on purpose. It's CIA. It's to show the rest of the countries, hey, if you fuck with our dollar and you try to make some other type of currency, we're going to topple you and stab you in the ass and kill you that way. And to further prove my point, Saddam Hussein, he was starting his own currency, which was going to hurt the oil dollar, and they went in and you saw what they did to him, and they hung him. Well, the CIA and all these people in charge of this stuff, they're smart. You can hang a person, and they drop, boom, and then they turn, and it just strangles them, which is the most... If there's a humane way to hang a person, there's a science behind it. But they didn't do that with Saddam. They made sure it pulled his fucking head off. When they hung him, and they leaked a YouTube out where when they hung Saddam, his fucking head got pulled off. Well, you're stabbing people in the ass and pulling people's heads off and bombing their countries because you're fucking with the dollar. That sends a message to the rest of this world and any of the other countries that get an idea. If you fuck with that Federal Reserve dollar, that's what's going to happen to you. So we're all waking up. We're realizing this paper that we're spending is backed by force, not any value at all. That's what I love about cryptocurrency. There's not anybody they can bomb. They can't pull somebody's head off for it, and they can't stab somebody's ass for it and kill them that way. You know, it's ones and zeros doing all of this, and I love that, man. Technology has saved mankind.
Yeah. Speaking of saving mankind, you've spoken a lot about compassion. You've spoken a lot about the approach that we should take to people that are within the system, that are essence bricks in the wall. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, how do you suggest people approach those in the system that are making the system run?
Well, I think because of money and force, the people, especially in the United States, I think their consciences are seared. There's so much generational abuse and generational slavery and generational propaganda. You got grandmother, great-grandfather, great-great-great-great, and all of a sudden you got a generation of people in the U.S. who are jumping up and down wanting somebody like Donald Trump to lead them. You know, that's pretty fucking crazy. I make the case that there's a large percentage of the population of the United States that are mentally ill. A person operating without compassion and love for another person is mentally ill. In fact, there's a name for that. They don't have a conscience. They're called a sociopath. You know, I read a book by a doctor. It's a brilliant lady who wrote the book. She says 25% of the people you meet are sociopaths. That means that doesn't mean they'll murder you and your children tonight, but that means if they did, it wouldn't bother their conscience. And they seem to be the ones best designed to make the millions of dollars in the corporations, and the best designed to be the police, and the best designed to be the military, because there's no compassion. That was the question. You said I talk about compassion a lot. Well, remove compassion from people, and you're going to get a world that needs to be unfucked pretty quick. And we better unfuck this world pretty quick, because more people are suffering than are prospering, and suffering in a bad way. And it's because of a lack of compassion. If somebody has compassion, that means they can feel, kind of understand the pain for suffering of another person. I'm rarely at peace. I'm rarely at peace because even when things are going the best for me in my life, I know somebody's starving. I know 80,000 people are locked in a fucking hole down there in the United States. I know we got military kids running around shooting motherfuckers because of and not for freedom, like they're tricked into believing. It's so the five families and the bankers and the politicians and the 1%, they call them 1%ers, it's less than 1%. It's so they can continue world domination. They care nothing about other humans because they don't have the compassion. And that's, for me, that's sad.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Peace, love, and never get busted.
Yeah. Peace, love, and never get busted.
All right, man. Come here.
Dash is, I think, is a very promising technology. And it is kind of, because of the system, it's kind of like a living organism, right? Bitcoin right now is funded by major companies, right? BitPay, Coinbase, Blockstream. They're funded by companies that have a particular intention and will. They want to create, they want Bitcoin to be something, right? But Dash is internally funded. Dash is dependent on the value of its unit, right? The more valuable that Dash is, the more money that there is for this organism to keep developing and adapting and growing. And that is a very new thing in the world. I honestly believe this is a cybernetic organism. We humans, and we mortal humans in the Dash community are basically helping the gears that move it, but we can fall away and this thing will continue.